The wildlands we know as Hallownest begin a long time ago, even before it was called Hallownest, even before its inhabitants knew the light. The oldest trace about Hallownest is the ancient civilization. They were a tribe originating from the abyss, the deepest part of Hallownest. They expanded out of the abyss some time later, leaving such things as soul totems throughout the kingdom, giant corpses of their own and arcane eggs. They worshipped no god or being, they worshipped a black substance, born in the abyss, the void. The void is not a unified entity, it is corrosive and hostile, when not controlled. The void forms terrible creatures, tendrils and many other things, but strangely, the light calms it. When the light shines, the void calms down, and it is because it is not unified. The ancient civilization awaits the moment when the void will unify, and the Lord of Shades will protect them from the light. At a certain point, the ancient civilization became extinct, for unknown reasons, but they still await the moment when the void given the focus arrives and they no longer fear the light. Like anywhere else, other tribes came and claimed territories, and divisions settled down. The simplest creatures in this place are bugs. They probably come from the ancient civilization, but they are smaller, weaker, and most importantly, they do not worship the void. In the northwest of the kingdom, a great forest was born. A higher being called Un was the creator of all life in this place, including the Mosskins. In every bush, in every tree, is the mind of Un. The Mosskins of course worship Un, she is their god. The Mosskins are not hostile creatures, but they defend their territory with their lives. Just below the forest created by Un, with the humidity of the caves, the mushrooms were born. They are territorial creatures and possess a hive mind and a language of their own, incomprehensible to any other creature. They have no devotion to any god, they have no higher being, they simply exist. But there is a strange mushroom, very strange, Mr. Mushroom. Seems that he doesn't have a hive mind, he seems to have a mind of his own, or is he probably the higher being that controls all the mushrooms? He is very weird. In the same place as the mushrooms, lives another tribe, they are the mantis. The mantis live in the depths of the territory of the mushrooms. They are proud and fierce creatures, who defend their territory from intruders. They do not worship anything, they have leaders, the 4 mantis lords, the most powerful warriors of the tribe. Next to the fungal territory, there is a dark and dangerous place. There live spiders and beasts, which are extremely aggressive. They are such intelligent species, that they have a mind of their own, but in reality they have a monarchy that rules the spider's nest. They are Hura the beast and the king who is unknown to us. The nest is divided into 2, the spiders and the weavers. The weavers have their own den, separate from the other spiders. They are not originally from the nest, but built their own den in it. Amazing things the weavers once crafted on their looms, stories, shields, spells, etc. The spiders are all over the nest, but they are mainly found in their lair, the beast's den, which is located in the deepest part of the nest. In the east of the kingdom, there are the snowy and dangerous cliffs. Their live creatures adapted to this climate, but for this reason, some of them still remain in their primitive form. In the southeast of this place is the hive, where of course the bees live. The bees are a hive-minded tribe. They are solitary and do not want to have any relationship with other species, probably an order from their queen, Vespa. Just above the snowy cliffs is a kind of pantheon, where the bugs perform rituals for the dead. The graves in this place are protected by the moths, who are a tribe with dream powers. They can access the dreams of others, with the powerful artifact called the Dream Nail. They built the Spirit's Glade, where the souls of death bugs can rest, and they also built the Shrine of Believers, which contains all the names of those who believed in Team Cherry. The moths fabricated artifacts to strengthen their dream powers, but this power is not free. They worship an entity, the most powerful entity, the Radiance, the light brighter than the essence. She grants this power to the moths on the condition that they worship her forever. Above this area there is a mine with precious crystals. Right on top of this place, a great statue of the Radiance was built. The Radiance, or rather, the statue, watches over the whole place. it is above all the future kingdom. The ancient place where the ancient civilization lived is just below the whole area, in the south. This place has no exit from any other place, so probably the other species did not know that this place existed. At a certain point, a colossal creature came to the edges of this place, near the snowy cliffs and the hive. He is one of the most powerful creatures that ever existed. He has the ability of foresight, which means he could predict the future to some capacity. Known as the Worm, he only came to this place to die, but what is death for that ancient being? The Worm doesn't actually die, his corpse was rejected and inside it, a new creature was born. Now he is a smaller creature, almost like common bugs, but he actually has an immeasurable power. But why did the Worm want to evolve into this new creature? The Worm had a plan, to found a kingdom where he would be the king, but he can't do that with his appearance. He will only produce fear in the bugs. That's the reason why he transformed into a smaller creature. The creatures describe him as the light, because he has an intense glow. The common bugs accepted him as their king, because he gave them sapience. Now they have a mind to think, but this only works in the limits of the future kingdom. If they go outside, they lose this capacity, important condition to maintain the order in the kingdom. With more promises and the acceptance of most of the bugs, the pale worm was crowned in the same place where the statue of the Radiance is, and finally founded the eternal kingdom, Hallownest. The new era of Hallownest arrived, and with it came the construction of stagways, which connected areas of the kingdom and were used to transport bugs and objects between areas. A tramway system was also built, connecting some areas that had no natural connections. In the center of Hallownest, the capital was built, beautiful buildings were erected, the roads of the city were perfectly carved, and the upper class of bugs lived there. In this place, a building was dedicated to creating and learning spells, all this by the Soul Master, who is a brilliant mind. Other buildings were simply the houses of the bugs, but another important one is the Watcher's Tower, where Lurien the Watcher and his servants live. Lurien is responsible for keeping the city in order and always sees the capital with his telescope. The kingdom was on the right track, but all was not well. Some tribes do not want to serve the Pale King, like the Mohskins, who still worship An, even when she is missing, sleeping in her lake for a long time and does not seem to be coming back. The Mohskins did not worship the king, but allowed him to build in the forest, now called the Green Path, the Pilgrim's Way, connecting the entrance of the kingdom with the capital. The beasts of the nest destroyed the tramway that was built right there, and almost killed all the workers. They attacked all the king's followers. For this reason, the king makes a deal with the mantises, who also don't want him in the kingdom. They protect the entrance of the deep nest if the king leaves them alone. Surprisingly, the moths not only accept the king, but begin to worship him. They adore him as their new light, as they began to forget the brightness of the radiance. The bees simply never accepted him. In the words of their queen, although this hive exists within Hallownest, we take no part in its attempted perpetuation. But with all these problems, Hallownest emerges and becomes a great kingdom. The king built his palace in the ancient basin, in the south of the kingdom. Exploring the place, the king finds a black door at the bottom of the ancient basin. When he opens the door, he finds the deep abyss corrupted and taken over by the void, all from the great sea of the void right at the bottom. The king knows that the void can be a big problem for his kingdom, but when he goes to look at the sea, the void becomes calm. Its bright light makes the void not hostile, so he decides to build a big lighthouse near the sea, to make sure the void always remains calm. The king built his palace over the abyss. The palace is white like him, and is known as the White Palace. The king learns about the power of the void and realizes that he can make soldiers and defense with the void to protect his palace. Many wing molds and king's molds were born to protect his palace and its inhabitants. But the void sometimes refuses to be controlled. It seems to be too hostile, so some molds were defective and some even escaped the king's control. But the king doesn't care about that. He had more important things to do. The king married another higher being, called White Lady. Her origin is unknown, but perhaps she is from Hallownest. She is a root with the ability to create beautiful flowers, but she has an insatiable desire to spread her seeds and propagate herself. However, she becomes the queen of Hallownest, and the wife of the Pale King. In order to protect the entire kingdom, the Pale King gathers 5 powerful warriors. This group is named the 5 Great Knights, and they are Oghren. He is the White Defender, and the most loyal of the 5 Great Knights. He can be considered the leader of the 5, since his will is always to remain with the other 4 knights. Zaymare, called by the other knights as the mysterious Zaymare, she is originally from the Serene Land, a place outside Hallownest, and loves to tell stories about her birthplace to the others. Hegemal, he is an imposing figure in large, heavy armor, but he is also soft-spoken, which is surprising for someone of his stature. Isma, she is considered the strongest of the 5, even stronger than Oghren. They two have a very close relationship. There is not much information about her. Drya, she is a tough warrior. The 5 refer to her as Drya the Fierce, but in reality she has a wise nature. She is the closest warrior to the White Lady. We can say that she is her defender. The peace and prosperity in Hallownest is a great joy for the Pale King. Its inhabitants adore him, but one day, in the crown of Hallownest, in that place where the king was crowned, evil began to circulate in the air. The Radiance is angry, very angry, because the moths had abandoned her. She wants to be remembered again, so she begins to appear in the minds of the inhabitants of Hallownest. They do not know what is happening. Some bugs were completely controlled by the Radiance, and those who resisted her will, began to get sick and infected by this orange substance. Chaos begins in Hallownest, and the king should do something, but in reality he can't do anything with his resources. The infection is a mental problem, so it seems that the only one who can help in this is the Soul Master. The Soul Master came to the conclusion that the soul, the energy that animates the bugs and beasts, is the solution to overcome the plague of their minds, but to do this, they have to kill the bugs with horrible methods to extract the soul from their bodies. The king refuses to accept this, so he forbids the Soul Master to do this, but he does not listen. He and his scholars begin to extract the souls of the bugs and consume it. Then, the Soul Master falls into madness, becoming a tyrant, but still he could not defeat the plague, because the infection goes beyond the simple power of the soul, it even goes beyond reasoning. The Pale King can do nothing with his resources, neither the 5 Great Knights, nor the Soul Master, nor the Mantis that were not infected, neither he nor the White Lady can do anything. The end of the kingdom was inevitable, and finally, Hallownest fell to the plague. On the outskirts of a desert territory, once a great kingdom, Hallownest, a creature named Quirrell was walking towards the old kingdom. All was going well, but his journey was disturbed by a patrolling Hornet, who protects the kingdom from intruders. Hornet attacks him, starting a battle, and after a few intense moments, Hornet is about to get the victory. She hits Quirrell's head, but his helmet protected him with an intense glow that made Hornet fly away. Quirrell is there for some reason, so Hornet lets him go and disappears into the dark fog. At the same time, a small knight was walking near. The knight has an empty look, with no destination and only with an old nail. The knight is just walking, something is calling it, something inside Hallownest. The knight arrives at Hallownest and goes deeper into the kingdom, arrives at a temple with a giant black egg and meets Quirrell. Both are there to explore the mysteries of the kingdom. The knight finds the Pilgrim's Way, which leads to the capital of Hallownest. The knight begins the journey and arrives at Green Path, the beautiful forest with a lot of life, but a bit infected by the plague. There, the knight encounters Hornet, but she runs away. After chasing her all over Green Path, the knight catches up with her and they start a fight. The knight wins and Hornet leaves the area after being defeated. The knight notices the corpse of a creature very similar to it, but 3 beings appear and put it to sleep eternally, but it doesn't work. The knight is strong, and wakes up from the dream. Not knowing what just happened, the knight continues the path and arrives to the capital. It seems to be raining all the time there, which is why it is called the City of Tears. Quirrell is sitting there, looking at the beautiful heart of Hallownest. Walking through the city, the knight finds a big statue, the memorial to the Hollow Knight. Hornet arrives there, but now peacefully. She only tells the knight that the truth of Hallownest is buried in their own history, and if the knight still intend a role in the perpetuation of Hallownest, it has to go to the tomb that doomed the fate of the kingdom, located beyond the limits of this one. She called it the Ghost of Hallownest, and leaves again. The knight continues to advance through the kingdom until reaches the ancient basin, where finds a locked door with the king's brand. The knight also finds the monarch's wings, a sign of the Hallownest monarchy. The king must be nearby, but the knight can't find him, only finds the palace grounds with remnants of it. The palace seems to have disappeared over time. The knight arrives at the kingdom's edge, where the power of the worm begins to lose capacity. The knight meets Hornet again. She flees to the most remote area of the realm, even beyond the limits. The knight again follows her and a new battle begins. Hornet now fights without holding back, using all her strength, but the knight again defeats Hornet, and now Hornet knows that the little ghost is there to know the truth. The knight finds the worm's grave, the giant corpse where the Pale King was born. There is the worm's brand. With this in its possession, the gates of the kingdom will open before it. Now the kingdom has a new ruler. The knight becomes the monarch of Hallownest. But just at that moment, an intense snowstorm buries the whole place with the knight inside. But Hornet saves it and leaving in a safe place. With this, the knight returns to the ancient basin, and opens the door at the bottom. Behind the door, lies the deep abyss. The knight can see a large amount of corpses, void beings, and aberrant void tendrils, and also finds a statue emanating void. The knight approaches the statue, but the void penetrates inside it and the knight becomes a void being. The knight now with the void inside it, goes and finds the monument of the dreamers. But there, the same beings that put it to eternal sleep appear again, and this time they leave the knight in limbo between the reality and dream realm. The knight was condemned to be there for eternity, but at that moment, a shining moth appears to help it. The moth gives the dream nail to the knight, the mysterious artifact that allows through dreams. With this, the knight wakes up in a room with the moth who helps it. She is the last member of the moth tribe, as they were nearly exterminated by the fury of the radiance. The knight continues exploring Hallownest and finds the resting place of the White Lady, but is surrounded by Mantis who decided to embrace the infection after the fall of the kingdom, and their leader, the traitor lord who has no more sapience. The knight has a battle with him and wins. The Mantis Lord, who embraced the infection, was defeated. Nearby is the chamber where the White Lady is. She gives a white fragment to the knight, which will only show its power when it is complete. Sometime later, the dream nail awakens all its power, due to the knight's use of it, and now it is the awakened dream nail that allows the knight to enter the most hidden dreams. The knight knows that this is the chance to find the Pale King, so it goes to the palace grounds and enters the dream realm where the White Palace is. Finally, the knight will be able to find the king, finally will know the truth of Hallownest. The palace looks like a huge trap, with giant saws, spikes and many more torture systems, but still the knight goes through the whole palace, checking every room. At the top of the palace, the bright light that is all over the palace does not seem to be there. On the floor, the guards lie dead. The void used on their bodies seems to have killed them. It looks like a catastrophe happened there. The knight finally finds the throne room. The room is completely dark, only illuminated by the king's glow. The knight approaches him, but realizes a terrible truth. The king is dead, his body is destroyed and the void seems to be inside him. The void is more powerful than he imagined. The corpse falls to the ground and drops the other part of the white fragment. The fragments unite and become the king's soul, which symbolizes the union between the Pale King and the White Lady, but more importantly, it will reveal the truth of Hallownest. The knight, with the union of the Hallownest monarchy in its possession, enters the deepest part of the abyss and discovers the Hallownest truth. After the infection of the radiance, the king devises a plan to try to stop the plague. Since the infection affects everyone with a mind to think, the perfect way to stop the plague is to contain the radiance in an empty being. The void at the bottom of the abyss seems to be perfect to contain the infection, because it is completely empty, it has no mind, it does not think, it only wants to destroy. But to get the perfect vessel to stop the plague, it has to contain the soul of the pale king and the white lady, it has to be the progenitor of the monarchy. The white lady gave birth to an egg containing the future children, who would be born sometime later. The egg was thrown to the bottom of the abyss, where the void tendrils corrupted it, killing in a frightful way all the future children of the pale king. The void was introduced into the corpses of the recipients, giving life to these new vessels. The king was waiting at the top of the abyss, waiting for one to come to him. The vessels began to climb, illuminated only by the light of the pale king in the deep darkness. Some of them could not even wake up, the void is so powerful that it consumed them completely, others were simply killed by the beasts of the abyss, some others tried to climb up to where the pale king was, but the abyss was so immense that most of them fell on the sharp spikes at the bottom, dying instantly, but one vessel scaled the gigantic abyss, reaching where the pale king was. The worm knew his plan was a success, for the vessel had a blank state, no mind to think, no will to break, no voice to cry and suffer, and was born of God and void. It is the Hollow Knight, the Hallownest Savior. With his goal accomplished, the king closed the gates of the abyss, with no remorse for the brutal act he had just done. The gates were sealed with the king's brand, and will never be opened again. The Hollow Knight was a novice, it has to be trained to reach the perfect form. The Pale King was responsible for training the Hollow Knight, and after a long time with this task, the Hollow Knight was finally ready. The worm was very proud of his creation, he had created the savior of Hallownest, but he knows that his progenitor has to complete the mission, to contain the infection. In the corpse of a giant creature, inside a black egg, the Hollow Knight was chained and sealed with the plague, and to be sure that nothing will go wrong, the Pale King requested the help of three powerful beings who would have to sleep for eternity to seal the black egg. They were Lurien, Monomon and Hura. Lurien the Watcher accepted this without any objection, as he wanted his beautiful city to return to its glory. Monomon the Teacher also accepts the mission, but something tells her that there is something wrong with the plan, something that doesn't quite fit. As extra protection, she gives her mask to her best apprentice, so she can't be awakened in any way. She tells her apprentice to leave Hallownest. If trouble starts in the kingdom, she will call him, but getting out of there was the best option. Hura the Beast does not accept the king's request, because of the problems between the kingdom of Hallownest and Deep Nest, but tells the king a condition to be a seal. Hura had lost his king, who probably died in one of the many internal battles in the nest, and Hura never had children with him, that's why he asks the king to have a descendant. The king really needs these beings to complete the plan, so he accepts Hura's request, and this is how the daughter of Hallownest was born. The dreamers will sleep for eternity and their powers will be used in the seals of the black egg. Lurien fell asleep in his tower in the Hallownest capital. Monomon locked herself in an acid container in her archives, just below the acidic lakes of Greenpath and began her eternal rest. Hura spent the last moments of her life with her daughter, and finally, she began her eternal sleep in her den, the beast's den, in the distant part of Deep Nest. Now, the Hollow Knight will be sealed with the infection. And so it was, the king's plan was finished. Peace and prosperity returned to Hallownest, its inhabitants were calm, the infection was only a terrifying nightmare, and Hallownest returned to its former glory. In honor of the Hollow Knight, a monument was erected in the capital, a Hollow Knight Memorial, to remember the savior of Hallownest for eternity. One day, when Hallownest had almost completely forgotten about the plague and the Hollow Knight, just when everything seemed to be going perfect, a deafening scream came from the Temple of the Black Egg. Orange smoke began to escape from there, and the populace began to feel terror again. The radiance had not been fully sealed and returned. With all the hatred possible, all the inhabitants would suffer the wrath of the radiance. Everyone, no matter how powerful they were, would suffer the consequences. Only the wisest and most powerful bugs would survive this, and that meant they would see in the front row the destruction of the kingdom. The Pale King, who had the ability to predict the future, knew this was going to happen. He knew the Hollow Knight was not completely empty. He gave special treatment to the vessel. He treated him as his family, which formed a bond between the two. That was the crack in the Hollow Knight's mind that the Radiants took advantage of, the catastrophic failure that Monomon predicted. The worm knew that the kingdom had no future, knew that the infection of the Radiants was inevitable, but decided to continue with this madness. The monarch of Hallownest, instead of trying to save his kingdom, simply disappeared with his palace. He went with it to the Dream Realm, escaping from the catastrophe that the infection caused. The gates of the capital were closed. The 5 great knights were fragmented. Hegemal disappeared without a trace, and his armor was stolen by a worm. Isma died in the grove just below the capital and became a root. The White Lady feels guilty for the terrible act that took place in the abyss, and decides to chain herself and retreat on Green Path, escaping the plague and being protected only by Dryad. The Mantis have problems. One of their leaders decided to embrace the infection to be the most powerful, but the other Mantis do not accept it, and he and his followers were exiled from the village and are now known as Mantis Traders. In their madness after accepting the plague, the Mantis Traders attacked the White Lady but were almost all defeated by Dryad, who dies defending the Queen. Lord Trader survives with other Mantis, and they fall completely infected. Hallownest, the Eternal Kingdom, has fallen. The Knight is a being of void like the other vessels, but the power inside it is so strong that now is oneself with the void. The void has finally been unified. The Knight now knows the truth, has to awaken the dreamers, starting with Lurien, in the Watcher's Tower. To awaken Lurien, the Knight defeats the Watcher's Tower guards, and reaches the room where he rests. Once there, the Knight enters the Dream Realm. To break the seal, Lurien has to die. To awaken Monomon, the Knight has to go to the bottom of Green Path, and finds the teacher's archives. The Knight not only finds it, also finds Quirrell, who tells it that something is calling him inside the beautiful building. They both enter the archives, but Monomon is protected by Umu. The Knight and Quirrell join forces to defeat it. Without the protector of the archives, they reach the room where Monomon is. But she can't be awakened because she doesn't have her mask. The mask was always carried by Quirrell. He is Monomon's apprentice who protects the mask as an extra security, but he lost his memory when he left Hallownest. So now, Quirrell returns the mask to Monomon. The Knight enters her dream and, in the same way as Lurien, ends Monomon's life. Only Hera impedes the access to the Black Egg. The Knight has to go through the nest, surrounded by traps, spikes, spiders and many other types of beasts to find the beast's den. The Knight arrives where the den is supposed to be, but the Knight does not find it. The long journey through the nest left the Knight exhausted, so some strange beings invited to rest for a while, but the Knight did not expect this to be a trap. The Knight is trapped in the beast's den, surrounded by murderous creatures. The Knight finds Hera's room, who is without any other protection. The Knight kills her, but when comes out of the Dream Realm, finds Hornet sitting on the side. Hornet, who was protecting the kingdom, is actually the daughter of Hera, the union between the Pale King and the Beast, the descendant of the nest, and at the same time of the Eternal Kingdom. She is the daughter of Hallownest. With the seals broken, from the Black Egg come out some cries of suffering. When the knight arrives, sees that the Hollow Knight is completely infected, chained and stares at it. The knight releases it from its chains and instantly, the Hollow Knight starts attacking the knight. They have a battle, but the Hollow Knight is sick, it cannot even make a simple attack, it is weak, consumed and controlled by the radiance. The Hollow Knight can't even stand up, and just at that moment, Hornet arrives and immobilizes it completely. The knight must end the infection, so uses the Dream Nail to go inside the Hollow Knight, to face the radiance. In the dream realm, a bright sun is in the background, the infection that torments Hallownest, and the Void unified are face to face. The radiance begins to attack the little ghost, who challenges her as no other being has ever done. In the battle, the radiance senses something nearby, she senses the Void. The knight knocks the radiance, the power of the light seems to be not enough to defeat the little knight, but she keeps trying to do something. The knight almost knocks her down again and she quickly goes up, but just at that moment, below her, the Void begins to take shape. The radiance is cornered by her enemy, she cannot avoid her fate. The Void completely consumed the brightest light that ever existed. The radiance, the infection, the evil that corrupted the kingdom, finally disappeared into the deep darkness. A big explosion destroys the Black Egg, and Hornet just witnessed the finish of the plague. It is no more in Hallownest, finally their habitants can be in peace. On the ground lies the knight's shell broken in half, its sacrifice returned peace to the kingdom. The knight returned to the abyss, from where it should never have come out. Through its sacrifice, Hallownest lasts eternal.